What drives someone who seemed absolutely perfect for you to suddenly act in ways that make no sense whatsoever? Picture yourself having dinner with someone you've known for ages, when out of nowhere they explode with disproportionate rage over an innocent joke. And you're left wondering what on earth just happened, because the brutal truth is, you probably did nothing wrong at all, but instead witnessed the human unconscious mind performing its most dramatic act right before your eyes. And Sigmund Freud taught us that behind every seemingly irrational behavior lies profound logic buried deep within our psyche, where every gesture, every word, every reaction conceals meanings that even the person acting them out cannot fully grasp, and what you're about to discover will forever transform how you read the people around you. As I reveal 6 hidden signals that expose the deepest mechanisms of the human mind, the very same ones Freud used to decode his patients' souls, and if you want to keep exploring the secrets of human behavior and become a detective of the unconscious, then subscribe to this channel, because the first signal I'm about to reveal will open your eyes to dynamics you see every day, but have never truly understood until now. And have you ever noticed how certain people always seem to find flaws in others that strangely mirror their own? Because this isn't coincidence, but one of the mind's most powerful defense mechanisms called projection. So imagine Mark, a colleague who constantly criticizes everyone else's arrogance, and during meetings, he's always first to comment about how someone's showing off or being too presumptuous. But what Mark doesn't realize is that he's projecting outward an aspect of himself he cannot accept, as his unconscious mind protects him from the pain of recognizing his own arrogance by shifting it onto others. And Freud discovered that projection is an automatic mechanism where our unconscious takes traits we consider unacceptable in ourselves and attributes them to people around us, like our psyche wearing glasses that make us see in others exactly what we refuse to see in ourselves. And the extremely jealous person who constantly accuses their partner of cheating is probably battling their own impulses of infidelity, while whoever obsessively criticizes others' selfishness often hides profound difficulty accepting their own needs, and they don't do this consciously because it's the mind protecting itself from the anguish of self-confrontation. And this mechanism has deep roots in our childhood, when to maintain our parents' love, we learn to repress certain aspects of ourselves with messages like, "Good children don't get angry," or "Don't be selfish," creating shadow zones in our personality, parts of us that exist but cannot be acknowledged. And projection allows us to maintain a positive self-image, but prevents us from truly growing. And when you recognize this pattern, you hold an incredibly powerful key to understanding yourself and others. So have you ever seen this pattern in yourself? Because the next time you find yourself judging someone, just pause for a moment, since what you're seeing might be a reflection of something living inside you. But there's another, even more subtle signal that reveals the unconscious mind's secrets. "And I love you. I mean, I hate you." Sarah immediately corrects herself, blushing as her ex-boyfriend looks surprised, and she justifies it as just a slip of the tongue. But Freud would tell us there are no random errors in the unconscious mind's language, because Freudian slips are wide-open windows into our most hidden desires, our deepest fears, the conflicts we dare not admit even to ourselves. And when the tongue stumbles, it's the unconscious taking control for an instant. So imagine being at an important job interview when the interviewer asks about your skills and you respond, "I'm very good at running away from responsibilities. I mean, taking them on," because your unconscious just revealed your true fear. And it wasn't a linguistic coincidence, but your psyche, speaking through you and Freud, observed that these errors always follow internal logic, where the conscious mind tries to maintain control, but the unconscious always finds ways to express itself, like an underground river suddenly emerging through a crack in the ground. And the most revealing slips often happen during emotional stress, when our psychological defense is lower. So during a couple's fight, you might call your a partner by an ex's name, and it's not distraction, but your unconscious revealing where your thoughts really are, and even seemingly innocent. Slips hide deep meanings like saying die instead of sleep when talking about going to bed might reveal hidden existential anxiety, while calling your girlfriend mom during an intimate moment unveils unresolved Oedipal complexes. And the most fascinating thing is that whoever makes the slip often doesn't even notice, because the speaker's unconscious is too involved in the process to realize what's happening. And this mechanism works in reverse too. When someone makes a slip that particularly strikes you, it's often because it resonates with something in your unconscious, like two psyches communicating at a deeper level than the rational one. So start paying attention to your slips and others, because they're coded messages the unconscious sends continuously. But the next signal you'll discover is even more revealing. And Elena is in her fourth consecutive toxic relationship, confiding to her friend, "I don't understand how this always happens to me, as they all seem different at first, then become identical, possessive, manipulative, cold." But what Elena doesn't realize is that this isn't unfortunate coincidence, but that she's trapped in what Freud called repetition compulsion, where we continue recreating the same destructive dynamics over and over, unconsciously, hoping to finally heal past traumas, as if the unconscious says, "This time will be different, this time I'll manage to fix things." So imagine Roberto, who changes jobs every 2 years because bosses are always incompetent. But what Roberto doesn't see is that he always recreates the same pattern, starting enthusiastic, then criticizing authority, entering conflict, feeling misunderstood and leaving. And it's not the bosses who are wrong, but Roberto unconsciously recreating conflict with authority figures, probably reliving unresolved dynamics with his father. And Freud discovered this mechanism originates in our early years, where children who grow up in chaotic environments often feel uncomfortable with stability as adults and unconsciously sabotage overly peaceful situations, while those who experienced emotional abandonment tend to attract emotionally unavailable partners, reproducing familiar but known pain, because the mind prefers familiar pain to the uncertainty of change. And it's easier to complain about being unlucky than admit we're the architects of our own destiny. And repetition gives us the illusion of control. If I keep trying, I'll eventually manage to change the outcome. But there's an even deeper aspect, where we often repeat traumas to try mastering them. As the child who suffered abandonment might as an adult provoke abandonment to feel they finally have control over the situation. And it's a desperate attempt by the unconscious to transform a passive victim position into an active agent. So recognizing these patterns is the first step to freeing yourself from them. And when you start seeing repetitions in your life, the same types of conflicts, the same disappointments, the same failures, it's not bad luck, but your unconscious sending you an urgent message. So what patterns are you repeating in your life without realizing it? Because the next signal will help you understand how these patterns hide behind seemingly normal behaviors. "And I'm never angry," says Luke with a forced smile, while his fists are clenched and his jaw contracted, demonstrating one of the most common defense mechanisms called reaction formation, where when an emotion is too threatening to be accepted, the mind transforms it into its opposite. And defense mechanisms are like invisible armor our psyche wears to protect us from truths too painful, and Freud considered them essential for psychological survival. But when they become too rigid, they prevent us from living authentically. So imagine Anna, a successful manager who works 14 hours daily, and when you ask about her private life responds, "I don't have time for such nonsense. I only think about career," because Anna is using intellectualization, transforming everything into abstract concepts to avoid feeling the loneliness devouring her inside, since it's easier to say, "I don't have time for love," than admit I'm afraid of being rejected. And denial is perhaps the most visible mechanism, like, "I don't drink too much," says someone with a wine bottle every evening, or "We're not in crisis," repeats the couple who hasn't spoken in months, because reality is too frightening to face, so the mind simply erases it from consciousness. And then there's displacement, where instead of getting angry at the boss you can't afford to challenge you, go home and yell at your partner or children because the emotion is real but directed toward a safer target. Like diverting a river to prevent it from flooding the main city, and sublimation is the most evolved mechanism, transforming destructive impulses into creative activities where aggressiveness becomes sporting passion, repressed sexuality becomes art, the need for control becomes leadership, and it's how civilized society channels primitive drives. And Freud noticed we often use different mechanisms simultaneously, where a person might deny being depressed, use negation, intellectualize, saying sadness is just a chemical reaction, use intellectualization, then become hyperactive to avoid thinking, use flight into action. And the problem isn't having defense mechanisms, because we all need them. But when they become so rigid, they prevent us from growing. And when the mask fuses with the face, we lose contact with who we really are. So what masks are you wearing without realizing it? Because the next signal will show you how the unconscious communicates through the body itself. And Maria says she's perfectly relaxed about the approaching wedding, but her hands shake. She's developed a tic in her left eye, and in the last month has had 3 unexplained headaches because her body is telling a completely different story from what her words want us to believe. And Freud was among the first to understand that the body is the unconscious mind stage, where when the conscious mind represses overly intense emotions, these don't disappear, but manifest through physical symptoms in what we call hysterical conversion, where psychic conflict converts into bodily symptom. So imagine Paolo, a businessman who suddenly develops stomach pains every time he has to give an important presentation, and doctors find nothing abnormal. But his body is expressing anxiety his rational mind refuses to recognize, as the stomach symbolically, the center of emotions, contracts because Paolo cannot digest the pressure he subjects himself to, and psychosomatic symptoms often follow symbolic logic, revealing the underlying conflict where whoever has a lump in their throat might have difficulty expressing emotions, whoever develops back problems might be carrying emotional weights too heavy, whoever has headaches might be overloaded with anxious thoughts. And Freud observed that every body part can become the theater of unconscious conflicts, where trembling hands might reveal hidden insecurity, a lowering voice might indicate guilt, eyes that cannot sustain another's gaze might hide deep shame, and even involuntary gestures speak, where constantly touching the neck might signal feeling vulnerable, always keeping arms crossed might seek protection, drumming fingers might indicate repressed agitation. Like the unconscious, using the body as an alternative communication system. And the most fascinating thing is these bodily signals often precede emotional awareness, because the body knows before the mind, where whoever is about to become depressed often develops physical symptoms. First fatigue, pain, sleep disturbances, and only later recognizes emotional suffering. And Freud also discovered hysterical identification, where we can develop physical symptoms similar to those of people we love or have. Unresolved conflicts, with as if the unconscious sought to create connection through shared suffering. So learn to listen to your body with new ears, because every tension, every pain, every unexplained symptom might be your unconscious trying to communicate with you. But there's one last signal, perhaps the most powerful of all. And Julia wakes up disturbed, having dreamed of being chased by a mysterious figure in a labyrinth with no exit. And she tells herself it's just a stupid dream, but feels uneasy all day, because what Julia doesn't know is she just received a direct message from her unconscious, a message that could change her life if only she knew how to decipher it. And for Freud, dreams were the royal road to the unconscious, where during sleep, when conscious mind defenses lower, the unconscious can finally express itself freely, but never directly, using symbolic language metaphors, condensations, like speaking in code to avoid waking the internal censor. So imagine Julia's dream doesn't speak of real pursuits, but her professional life, where the chasing figure might represent responsibilities she seeks to avoid, and the exitless labyrinth might symbolize feeling trapped in an unsatisfying career. Because the unconscious uses metaphors, since direct truth would be too distressing, and Freud distinguished between manifest content, what we remember from the dream, and latent content, the true hidden meaning where a dream of a falling tooth might not regard fear of the dentist, but anxiety about losing power or attractiveness, while dreaming of flying might represent the desire to free oneself from oppressive limitations. And recurring dreams are particularly significant, where if you keep dreaming of being late for an exam, your unconscious is probably processing anxieties related to judgment and performance. And if you always dream of searching for something you can't find, you might be seeking a lost aspect of yourself. And even nightmares have a function forcing us to confront fears we avoid while awake, where the monster chasing us might represent an aspect of ourselves we refuse to recognize, and the collapsing house might symbolize fear that our identity is crumbling. And Freud noticed that in dreams, people from our past often appear but represent parts of ourselves, where dreaming of a deceased parent might mean we're processing the psychological inheritance they left us, while dreaming of an ex-partner might indicate we're still working on unresolved relational patterns. And the most powerful dreams are those that wake us with intense emotions, because these emotions are real and important. They're how the unconscious draws our attention to issues requiring processing. So start keeping a dream journal, because even the smallest fragments can reveal profound meanings, as your unconscious is trying to communicate with you every night. So are you ready to listen? And Freud taught us we're much less masters of ourselves than we think. But this isn't condemnation, it's liberation. Because when you start recognizing these signals, you stop being a victim of the unconscious and become its collaborator. And the question I leave you with is this: now that you know these signals, are you ready to use them to understand yourself and the people you love at a completely new level? And if this journey into the unconscious struck you in some way, like this video and subscribe to the channel. And from what city are you watching? Comment down below, because I want to know where the brave people who decided to look within themselves are coming from.